Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our Dynasty IDP Rookie Rankings with tiers before the 2025 NFL Draft.
Hike!
In this episode, Joe and I are both going to be going through our top 15 Rookie IDP Rankings with tiers. This is going to be a much better class than last year, Joe, when we did this exercise. So I'm excited. I'll be witnessing your rankings just like everybody else when I hear them, and as vice versa with me as well. So who do you have in tier number one?
All right. And tier number one, I've got Travis Hunter. And at number two, I've got Abdul Carter.
Joe, typically you and I, and right out of the gate, you and I typically agree, and we're going to be looking about similar here. Number one, I've got quarterback Travis Hunter. And then number two, defensive end, Abdul Carter. Joe, these guys are absolutely elite prospects. I'll start here with Travis Hunter. We just heard recently that he said he would rather retire than not being able to play on both sides of the ball. We'll see if an NFL team, whoever drafts him, decides to play hardball. I think they probably will try to accommodate his request of wanting to play both. But I'm actually really excited to watch him. I mean, we've never really seen a guy play like this. I mean, yes, Champ Bailey, your former Bronco, Joe, right? He had the ability to play on both sides of the ball back in Georgia, but you'd say we've never seen anybody like him. Even Dion. I don't think we've seen anything like Travis Hunter.
Yeah, no, I don't think we've ever seen a player that consistently played like full time on both sides of the ball. Now, mind you, I don't think an NFL team is going to allow him to do that. But
you don't. You think he's just going to play one side?
Well, full time, I should say. I do.
Okay.
We'll see. It's just interesting, man, because like you hear some teams view him as a corner, then you got teams like the Cleveland Browns who view him as a wide receiver, and ultimately they could let him play some quarterback snaps. But I think it would be better if a team looked at him as he got drafted by a team that views him as a corner, then lets him moonlight as a wide receiver, because I think that's an easier process than him playing every down as a wide receiver and then kind of moonlighting as a corner, as they have been coining that term.
Yeah, one thing I really want to hit home here with him: 11 pass deflections. In our league, you get quite a good bit of points in pass deflections. And honestly, if you're going to have cornerbacks as your starters, they should be getting points for pass deflections, because that's more frequent than what you'll see with interceptions. And an interception is a pass deflection according to the NFL. So to me, I think he could have a ton of pass deflections. This guy could be just the ultimate cheat code.
Yeah, it really can. I mean, especially if you're in a league like ours that would allow you to collect those offense and defensive points. He truly will be, he's a one-of-a-kind player and will be a cheat code, and as much of a cheat code as we see, Shohei Ohtani in baseball when he pitches and hits as well.
At the end of the day, I would say I would have no complaint in a IDP and offense league if you had Travis Hunter as the number one player. And honestly, I really wouldn't. Depends on how you rank your defense. We've heard comments to say we usually see defenders go at the back end of the first round. In our league, you see, defense score roughly around the same points as offense. But Abdul Carter, Joe, he's an elite guy as well.
Yeah, he is 100%. And both of these guys are elite. I mean, you hear just in this draft, there's really the three guys that are absolutely elite. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. They mentioned Cam Ward at quarterback, but then outside of that in the draft, like it could really go anywhere. But, Abdul Carter led the Big Ten with 22 tackles for loss and 11 sacks. Really just, like to see that speed play. He's got the ability to kind of play inside linebacker and also rush the passer as well.
And that's why they have the comparison, maybe some say lazy comparison with Micah Parsons also coming from Penn State, being able to linebacker switching to the outside. But the one thing I will always love to look at for edge is, can they have a strong bend? Von Miller is the best at it, Joe. You witnessed it, for so long with the Broncos. If you're able to do that, and Abdul Carter can, I think he's a can't miss guy. I know some people worry about a stress fracture. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm not really worried about that either.
So let's head over to tier number 2. Who do you got there?
All right. Tier number 2 and number 3, I've got James Pierce Jr. At number 4, Mike Green. And number 5, Jalen Walker.
Okay, at number 3, I've got defensive tackle Mason Graham. That's it.
Wow.
Yes, and I'm a little disappointed in you, Joe, as a Michigan man yourself, that you aren't ranking our guy here, or my guy, I should say. He's not your guy because you're not even
Yeah.
on that high. Mason Graham. Look, he's 6'3.5", 296. He has great movement skills for a guy his size. Now, if you look at the stats, you wouldn't say they were overly glamorous at 46 tackles and 3.5 sacks. But just to take this into context here, his pass rush say that 5 times fast. Pass run win rate, okay, was 14%. His run stop percentage was 11.4%. Those are similar numbers to Jalen Carter. So you're talking about a player that has the ability to be a Jalen Carter-esque type player. And when we talked about him a few years back when he was a rookie, we were talking about him being one of the number 1 IDP guys. Defensive tackle is thin. If you can get a top guy, there's a huge difference in fantasy points per game. I almost thought about him putting him in tier 1. A lot of people view him as an elite prospect. I felt like he deserved to be in his own tier because of that.
Yeah, interesting. I just, view these edge rushers and their abilities to get sacks higher than the defensive tackle, but you're not wrong. It does pay off to have a dominant defensive tackle. I think Mason Graham definitely has that ability. But even when we did our way too early, IDP mock draft, you had him higher than me. You've always been a lot higher on Mason Graham than I am.
Well, do you view him as better than Jalen Carter or some of the most recent defensive tackles? I'm trying to think. He was probably one of the most talked about over the past few years. I asked Quentin Williams was that taken pretty high. I'm trying to think of other defensive tackles that were like really highly regarded.
Yeah, I think he's just Mason Graham is just different than Jalen Carter, so it's hard for me to see that comparison. But they both are, dominant interior players. Jalen Carter is just so physically imposing because he's so big. Mason Graham isn't necessarily that, and I know people knock him for, not having the long arms and everything. But that doesn't really concern me.
So ultimately, it comes down to you just don't value the position as much as I do, essentially.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So what about for your guys? So you've got 3 edge rushers with Mike Green, James Pierce being the first guy you said, then Mike Green, then Jalen
Walker.
Yes.
You are correct.
So give me the spiel here. What was your thoughts? Why did you rank him that way?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned we got the big play scoring in our leagues and looking to get those sacks, and that's something that all these guys definitely have. And with James Pierce Jr., really just like his speed and athleticism, that's really how he wins. I mean, he's recorded over 110 quarterback pressures during his collegiate career. It kind of reminds me of a player like Chop Robinson, just because he can win with that speed, and that's his go-to. And you really can't teach speed, but you can teach other additional pass rush moves. And then Mike Green is a guy I really like as well. Even though he played at Marshall, I mean, he had 84 tackles, 17 sacks, 23 tackles for a loss. And he really just plays with a relentless motor, high determination, and he really has the athleticism to just be a really good edge rusher. And then he's also seen him, drop into coverage, which is nice as well.
And for Walker, Jalen Walker?
Yeah, Walker, like the other guys that we've seen to talk about, got that versatility to play inside or outside linebacker. He had 60 tackles, 6.5 sacks in 2024. Another guy plays with high motor and, has a high football IQ as well, as he's really good in play recognition.
I will say I won't comment on those guys just yet because I will be talking about them later. But I am a little surprised that Mike Green isn't higher for you because last year you were hot on Latu. He was your guy. And to me, Mike Green is the guy who's got the most, and I'll talk about this, but his repertoire of pass
Right.
rush moves. I mean, he's got everything in the book, right? So that's what you liked about Latu. So that's why I'm a little surprised that you are taking a pure speed guy with James Pierce when you have a guy like Mike Green who's got all the moves.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. I guess, it was close. It was, a tough call between the two of them. I like both of them. But ultimately, I just think the speed and the upside of Pierce, could be higher.
So you think so? You're going with traits over skill set on that because his pure traits of his speed. You feel like that's
Yeah, like I said, man, you can't teach that speed that he has, and
mm,
over time he can develop those different pass rush moves than a guy like Matt Green has. And honestly, everyone was saying Latu last year was really the most polished, edge rusher, and it really didn't have anything to show for it. But
you're changing your
um,
tune a little bit.
well, he didn't have anything to show for it. But I mean, let's face it, those edge
Mm.
rushers pale in comparison to this class, and these guys are a lot better than what we were ranking last
Well,
year.
hey, Jared Verse had a pretty good year last year.
Okay, outside of Jared Verse, but like the other guys that we're talking about. I mean, yeah, Verse was the cream of the crop last year.
All right, let's head over to tier number 3. Who do you got there?
All right, in tier number 3 at number 6, I've got Mason Graham. At number 7, I got Donovan Ezeraku, and at 8, Shamar Stewart.
Interesting. We're definitely going to be different on this. At number 4, I got Mike Green, defensive end Mike Green. 5, I got defensive end James Pierce Jr. Number 6, I've got defensive tackle Walter Nolan. And then number 7, linebacker Jihad Campbell. So I'll go ahead and talk about Mike Green and James Pierce since you talked about them before. I don't disagree with you. It was very close, razor thin. I was going back and forth on the two guys. I also thought the same thing you did about Mike Green playing at Marshall, but I honestly went more with the technique. I mean, he's 6'3", 251. And at the end of the day, he's got so many moves in his arsenal. 65 pressures, over a 22% pass rush win rate. To me, that's elite. And, yes, he played in the Sun Belt. But you watch him, even against Ohio State, he had that beautiful spin move and just came down and just sacked Will Howard. That was the national champions right there. He had no problem. Let's not forget a guy like Max Crosby. He played at Eastern Michigan. So just because he's playing at Marshall doesn't mean he can't be a really good player. So to
Yeah.
me, I gave it a little bit towards Mike Green. You can't go wrong. I mean, I also like James Pierce as well. I mean, he had a blazing 40-yard dash at 4.47. His speed at 6'5", 245, it's impressive. But I think he relies a little too much on the speed. He's got a pass rush on the inside. He's got speed to go around the outside. He does flash some bull rush capability, but I think he needs to add some weight. But what I like about him, and I think his biggest strength, is he's got great closing speed and he's able to finish. And for an IDP league, yes, pressures are great, but you're not getting points for pressures. You're getting points for sacks. You're getting points for QB hits. So to me, I really like his closing speed and his finishing skills because that's going to show up on the box score. Pressures aren't. It's just a reality.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a reality. I mean, you got to at least hit the quarterback to get some points.
Yeah. Although I wish you had the ability because
Yeah.
I think Hurries, are indicative of how good of a player is. Sacks are just, the cherry on top, if you will.
And hurry still impact the play. I mean,
Absolutely.
you force the quarterback to throw it before they want to, leads to interceptions and completions. Usually not a lot of good things.
That's where advanced metrics and analytics have kind of blown the game past, and the passes by. We look at the box score; it's not incorporating that type of stuff. Stat providers certainly can look at that, and I think we have the advanced technology to be able to. You see next gen stats when you're watching the live broadcast on NBC; they'll pop it right up. It's just not accessible to fully accessible to everyone else at this point. But I've been talking quite enough here. Let's talk about some of the players you had here, because I've got two players in Walter Nolan and Jihad Campbell that you've not mentioned. So I'll kick it over to you because you've had Donovan Ezeraku, and he's a tough last name to say. Ezeraku from
Yeah.
Boston College in there, and you said a few others as well.
Well, I had Mason Graham, who you had in a tier of his own, and was wondering when I was going to, obviously say his name.
Did you want to say any more about Mason Graham, or that's you agree with me? You just have him a little rank a little lower.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too much to add. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, Mason Graham. I mean, he is the best defensive tackle in this draft. He's definitely a really talented player. As we mentioned, you value the defensive tackle position a little bit more than me. Even though it, I do get your sentiment though, because you do have to. It is important to have the dominant ones because it's a more shallow position. So I get your argument. I just guess they don't typically have the scoring ceiling that the defensive ends do.
Let me ask you this then, because now I'm curious. Okay, so would you ever now, mind you, okay, if you're listening or watching, you're just close your eyes, shut your ears, because you're not gonna like it. In our league, though, where you have defense, pretty much similarly ranked in our league, would you ever consider drafting a defensive tackle in the first round ever in our 16 team league?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, I would too, but I didn't know if you really undervalued the position. I didn't know if you felt
No,
like he was a second round pick.
yeah, no, I know. I don't think it's a second round pick because, like you said, I mean, he does have the ability to, um, be one of those top defensive tackle scorers, and that obviously is important to have one of those where, the edge rusher position is typically a bit deeper and something you could, wait a little bit longer to go ahead and grab a guy where like, the defensive tackle is going to impact your roster more. I'd say that.
Well, I think that's the important thing to consider too, right? We're looking at this as our rankings. You're looking at best player available, but you also have to evaluate for team need. If your defensive
Right.
tackles are just buns, then hey, you got to go get a defensive tackle. So I mean, you have to evaluate your roster.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the tough part, but just generally, defensive ends, edge rushers have a bit more upside, so I rank them, higher than a guy like Mason Graham.
All right, now give us a spiel on Ezraku and Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, Ezraku, man, I watched his tape. I really liked it. I mean, he's 6'2", 248 with a 4.62 40 time. He had 80 tackles, 37 solo, 3 forced fumbles, 17 sacks. He's a guy that just really has an explosive first step. You talk about bend, Steve. This guy's got a natural bend to turn the corner. Really plays with a relentless motor to get to the quarterback and also chase down ball carriers in the backfield. So I was pretty impressed with him. I honestly hadn't watched too much of him, but had seen other people talking about him, decided to go ahead and look at him, and I was pretty impressed. And then last guy I've got is Shamar Stewart, 6'5", 267 pounds, 4.59 40 time, 31 tackles, 14 solo, forced fumble, 2 sacks. This guy just dominated the NFL Combine. He's freakishly athletic for his size. Another guy that's got a relentless motor and pursuit to the ball. And he just, it's amazing how agile he is for how big he is.
So for me, for the other guys I got to talk about here, because I'll comment on yours a little bit later here. Walter Nolan, he was a huge riser for me. I don't even know if I had him in when we did our too early IDP rankings. I don't know if I even had him on there, but boy, he was a huge riser for me. 6'4", 296, 48 tackles, 6.5 sacks for a defensive tackle. He's a former #1 recruit coming out of high school. It's interesting because if you listen to other people in the space, they'll say, well, he's not that good in the run. And I'm watching and I'm like, I don't know what they're seeing. I'm seeing stuff after stuff after stuff. I just don't understand it. Maybe, obviously maybe the low lights, maybe he's getting absolutely pancaked. I don't know. But to me, he had a 10.9% run stop rate and a 10.1% pass rush win rate. For a defensive tackle, that's elite. That's really, really good numbers. The guy's got high motor. He's got twitch. To me, I am really excited about this guy. And I think he's just scratching the surface of his potential. So at a defensive tackle, you and I talked about, Joe, you got to be able to get tackles, but you need to have the pass rush upside. He has it, as does Mason Graham. So to me, that's why these guys are worthy of being this high. As far as Jihad Campbell, Joe, you were the one who first mentioned this guy. I looked into it a little bit more, and he's just linebacker scares me a little bit. I know in IDP, they're the darling. Everybody wants linebackers, but linebackers, I'm a little more cautious of because it's like these guys. You could have a guy like Bobby Spillane pop out of nowhere and get you around the sim stats. Why am I going to spend a high draft pick on a linebacker? But
Right.
to me, he's a modern. He's today's NFL linebacker. He's a modern linebacker. He's a converted edge rusher to linebacker. He has the ability to rush, cover, tackle. 119 tackles, 5 sacks. He's only going to be 21 years old. Now, you don't really see off-ball linebacker get drafted in the first round too much anymore in the NFL. I feel like it's kind of a forgotten position. So we'll see if he ends up going in the first round or not. But to me, he fits that mold. It felt like he was worthy of this spot for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting how we kind of have flip-flopped on him a bit there.
We did flip-flop, and I actually have another flip-flop that we're going to be talking about later, which is kind of interesting. All right, so let's head over to tier number 4. Who do you got there?
All right, tier number 4. At number 9, I've got Michael Williams. At number 10, I've got Derek Harmon. 11, Carson Schweichinger. And at number 12, Walter Nolan.
Interesting. All right. So at number 8, I've got Nick Amonwori from the safety out of South Carolina. Number 9, safety Malachi Starks. And number 10, linebacker Carson Schweichinger. So nice to hear you talked about Walter Nolan, Joe. It seems like you like him as well.
Yeah. Walter Nolan definitely is a guy to like. I mean, he's a twitchy, explosive player for a guy that, is inside. And like you said, he's got the sack upside. Just one thing I thought was interesting, like you said, a guy like Daniel Jeremiah, was one of his critiques was just sometimes he can kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit, get washed down in the run game and stuff. So I just wondered if that would, kind of impact him if other NFL teams feel that way. But from a dynasty and IDP upside, with that sack upside, I really do like his abilities.
And then what were some of the other guys? You mentioned Michael as well.
Yeah, Michael Williams, Derek Harmon, and like you, Carson Schweichinger.
So what are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, so with Michael Williams, it's interesting because I believe you mentioned him before me last time.
I did. I think I had him at last. I think I had him last. Yeah.
Yeah. He's 6'5", 260, ran a 4.77 40. He had 5 sacks, but I think he just, he's an interesting player. Watched his tape and I liked what I saw from him. Another guy that has a really relentless motor. And then he's also a versatile player. You see him play with his hand in the dirt, but then also could play as a stand-up outside linebacker as well. So I thought that was interesting for him. He's got nice power at the point of attack and a nice bull rush to go along with it. And then, Derek Harmon, I got to tell you, he's a guy that I was pretty impressed with. That's why he's my second defensive tackle from Oregon, 6'4", 313 pounds, ran a 4.95 40 time. He also, he had 5 sacks in the interior defensive line, which is nice. But, just watching him, I think what's different with him is he's more knowledgeable than a guy like Walter Nolan when it comes to the run game. He's a high processor. He kind of reads the gaps and he's in position to go ahead and make those plays. But then, he's got some nice rip move on the inside and a bull rush move that allows him to get those sacks.
Interesting. Well, we both had Carson Schweichinger here. I'm a little surprised you had him higher than G.I. Campbell, but at 6'2.5", 242, I also think he fits that modern build of a linebacker that the NFL looks for. 136 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. He can shoot the gap on the blitz, but he's also good in coverage. So I think you probably like him for similar reasons as I do.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. With Schweichinger, man, I just I don't know. After watching him, I just impressed with him, and
it was that long blonde hair. I think you just like seeing that hair flowing out. I don't know.
I like that flowing out of the helmet, but he's just a guy that plays with so much intensity. He's an absolute dog. I like that. A guy that just like plays with his hair on fire, especially when he's blitzing.
I just think of hair on fire. Yeah. That's what you think about. Absolutely.
Exactly. I mean, watching him blitz the quarterback, he's just got that relentless pursuit, not only to the quarterbacks, but ball carriers in the backfield. And then, also is a heady player when it comes to, dropping back in his own coverage and reading the quarterbacks.
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised you didn't even mention the two safeties, but it might be just because, the position isn't as important. But to me, Eman Wari, he's a box safety, but I mean, he did unbelievable in the combine. 6'3", 220. He ran a 4.38 40-yard dash and a 43 vertical, excuse me. But he had 88 total tackles, 2 pass deflections, 4 interceptions. I put him ahead of Starks. Because he's just more athletic, and ultimately Starks is going to be more of your free safety type. You got to hope that maybe he's used as a hybrid. Maybe he does, play some little nickel in there, kind of, is more all around the field and gets a lot of pass deflections and interceptions. But I think both are very, very good. And I felt like they were worthy of this tier.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I'll definitely be talking about one of them and then later.
All right. Well, let's head over to our final tier number 5. Who do you got there?
All right, tier number 5 and number 13, I got Nick Emenwari, 14, Shahad Campbell, and 15, Nick Scorton.
Okay, so at number 11, I've got defensive end Micah Williams, 12 defensive end Shamar Stewart, 13 defensive tackle Derek Harmon, 14 defensive end Donovan Ezeraku, and then 25 defensive end Jalen
25.
Walker. Or sorry, 15 Jalen Walker. So this here, I'll just describe my tier here. I know you've had a lot of these guys ahead of me. This is my potential tier. These are guys who have some traits, they have some abilities that you could think could take it to the next level, but they're big, like who knows what's going to happen with them. I put Micah Williams first because I think he's the least risky. He dealt with an ankle injury this past season, had 5 sacks. He's going to only be 20 years old coming into the draft. 6'5", 265. He's a great run defender, so he can play all 3 downs. It's just a question of can he develop the traits to become a better pass rusher. That's the question with him, but he should be able to be there for at least rundowns. So that, to me, makes him a higher floor. With Shamar Stewart, he's the guy I loved last time, and that is who I was referring to that I flip-flopped with you. He definitely was a combine warrior. There's no question about it. In 39 pressures, his athleticism was off the charts. He had a 9.99 RIS. My thing is, can he put it all together? I don't know. I'm very curious as to who drafts him. He's a project, and he doesn't finish, obviously, because he didn't get a lot of sacks. So he's intriguing to me. There's no doubt about it. But after looking at it a little bit more, I'm like, I don't know. These other guys are a little bit more polished. For Harmon, I liked Harmon a lot. But my big thing, and you didn't mention this, was he had a 15.4% missed tackle rate, which was pretty high considering the other defensive tackles. Now, he did have a pass rush win rate of 12.3%, which was higher than Nolan and Grant. So that is, you're right about that as far as the pass rush. He's got an explosive first step. He only had 1 year of production. I think he needs to get better against the run. But for a league like ours, who really prioritizes the sacks, the big plays, I think he could be really, really good. Ezeraku, I like him, but the thing is, I don't like his size at 6'2.5", 248. He's smaller. He's definitely, in my mind, a pure speed rusher. Doesn't have that bull rush, but you can't deny the 16.5 sacks that he had that led the FBS. So I'll give him that. So, but the question is, and I really like this. I actually heard this from Field Yates. I thought he did a really good job saying this. When you look at a defensive end, you're looking at 3 things. You're looking at I think he said, next look, now I'm going to forget it now that the pressure's on. But he said something along the lines of size. I think it was traits, athleticism, and then pass rush moves, and then kind of that. And you kind of look at those 3 things. Sure, to me, the size concerns me. You don't see a lot of players be that dominant at his size.
Yeah, I could see that being a factor. I mean, he's a lot smaller than the other guys that we talked about, but I just, his overall production, though, size didn't really seem to matter. We'll see if it does at the next level.
Last guy I'm going to talk about here before I flip it over to you, Jalen Walker. I almost was tempted to take him out of the top 15 for me. I'm really low on this guy. He's 6'1", 243. He's a tweener. He's completely undersized. I don't see him being able to be an edge rusher. I understand he's explosive. I just don't think teams are going to know how to use him. He's not a good off-the-ball linebacker, so they're going to have to play him at edge. I think if somebody takes him in the top 10, I think it's a huge reach. I just think he's a specimen in a lab that people are, goo gaga over. And I think they're not going to be able to find a place for him. We've seen guys like this before. Not, I'm saying in the same vein, but you think of guys like Isaiah Simmons. Oh, he was drafted. Like, he can play all these different positions. The guy's been going all these different places. So Jalen Walker scares me because I just unless he can go somewhere where I'm confident that they have a plan for him. But he's a guy he's on my avoid list, especially for where he's at as far as his average draft position. No thanks.
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I think a landing spot will definitely tell a lot for him. But as we've said before, just ranking these guys on their athleticism and potential, obviously I ranked them a lot higher than you did.
So you only had Eman Wari in there in your final tier here, Joe. I do know you like Eman Wari better. Surprise Starks didn't make the cut for you. But then you also had Nick Squoten from Texas A&M, and you had one other guy.
Yeah, I had Jihad Campbell.
So what were your thoughts on those guys to wrap it up?
Yeah, Eman Wari, I mean, you mentioned it. Just his positional versatility, and for him being more of a tradition, a box player than a guy like Malachi Starks. That's ultimately why I have him here. And I just think he's going to be able to get you more of the IDP points because Malachi Starks is more of the free safety. That's one of the concerns I have for him. And if he's not getting the interception and pass deflections, then you're going to be disappointed when it comes to IDP. But yeah, ultimately I moved down Jihad Campbell from where I had him. I just really liked Carson Schwarzenegger better, so I moved him up there.
The hair. It's definitely the hair.
But Jihad Campbell, he definitely is a very good player in his own right. I had 117 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. He's another guy that just plays downhill, effective as a blitzer as well. Also has the versatility to play edge as well. And then, with Nick Scorton, talk about a guy that's got an advanced, pass rush arsenal, Steve. He's got a club move, a swim move, cross chop. Also has a really nice spin move as well to combine with his quickness to be able to get off of blockers. And then also provide some special teams experience, which could allow him to, hit the field a little bit faster in his NFL career.
That's the one for me. Size was not necessarily my favorite with him. So that was, or I think was it size or athleticism? I'm trying to remember. I did look at him, but I couldn't remember.
He's got he's 6'3", 247 pounds.
He's a little smaller.
Yeah.
So that does it for this episode. We went through, Joe and I both, our top 15 Dynasty Rookie IDP rankings with tiers before the 2025 NFL Draft. The draft is here before we know it. We're talking about a week away. We just can't believe it.
Can't wait, Steve.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check our most recent episode out where we talked about our Dynasty Rookie tight end rankings with tiers before the 25 NFL Draft. We've talked about quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, so go check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.